Hello and welcome to the second module for the Final Fantasy card game. In this second module, we are going to talk about the different card types that you can include in your deck. In the last video, I just realized that I forgot to mention the card max is three copies of a single card unless noted on the card itself. For example, this Healing Wind card that is in my discard pile currently, it's Aerith only and it's limited to one copy per deck, so you can only play one copy of that. Um, some of us like to ignore those rules and include two black materias in their deck when they probably shouldn't. But anyway, that's just an inside joke for my wife. So let's carry on here. So the setups. In the previous video, I talked about your planning step. In this one, we're talking about setups and equipment cards because those are the two card types that you can play in your planning step. And specifically, setups, you could play as many of these. You could have a billion of them on the board, and it's not going to hurt you at all. Setups, you play them during your planning step, and then during combat, they have specific powers, instant powers, floating effects that you can use to get something out of them. Where equipment cards are a little bit different. Um, each character can have one card equipped, but most equipment cards have a constant effect that is just ongoing at all times. You get this effect. And certain characters will say equipment 2 or equipment 3, 4, 5, 6, even all the way up to 7. So be on the lookout when you're deck building. Think about how many equipment cards am I choosing, and is that going to hurt me? Am I going to be overloading my characters with too many equipment cards or just enough? That's definitely something to consider when you're building your deck. So equipment cards, they've got your constant effects. You can only have one equipped per character unless otherwise stated on the character card itself. And then your setup cards, you play it, it has a power, instant power, floating effect in combat that kind of gives you a powerful effect one time. And then from there, let's go ahead and actually back up to the characters. I probably should have started there, but each character has a synergy, a class, and your alignment. Sorry, I forgot that word for a second. So your synergy, in the last video we talked about the cross swords. This is your physical attacking synergy. And then also Cloud is a soldier and he's a hero. So there are going to be cards in the game when deck building that specifically reference those things. So a card might say soldier only. Simply enough, a character that you are playing has to have that in order to include it in your deck. So that's also kind of a strength of including more of these characters in your deck building. Yeah, I'm going to do less damage, but look how many more cards I have access to. Look at all this stuff I can do. Um, so just keep that in mind when you're building your deck. Real quick, I'm going to point out in the deck builder in Octagon, there's actually a cheat sheet for the symbols that are in the game, especially these synergy symbols. So I'm going to quickly just go through them real quick. There is this cross sword symbol that is for physical attacking. And then you have, if you look on the bottom left here, there's a white magic, that's the little magic hat, the black magic, that's the little meteor, and then the red magic, and that is your little rapier looking thing there. And then also, I don't think either of these decks run one, but there is a blue magic that looks like a little thieves mask as well. So when building your deck, look for cards that have the same symbol that your characters have because they probably work together in some way, right? Anyway, let's go back to your attack here. Last video we talked about the structure of the turn going into combat. So let's say I draw my 3 here, and this is not a great hand for entering combat. We're just gonna say we enter combat anyway. Um, so I drew this double strike attack, right? What do I do with it? I play it as my action in combat, and immediately I'm going to use all of its effects. unless it says hit, because in that instance you have to hit. Your opponent can play blocks in responses to your attacks. So we play this double slash card. We're going to gain 1 experience, which we covered in the last video on Cloud. And then the attack's going to stay in play to be used a second time. So we're going to hang on to that for a second. And in this instance, Misuzu, my opponent here, would get to have an opportunity to block. And if she does have a block in her hand and she chooses to block this attack, she would resolve all of her block's effects. So just for the sake of this video, we are going to look at Reflect, and it says stop a magic attack. So it wouldn't stop this attack, actually. It needs to say stops a sword's attack, this little sword symbol, in order to stop this attack. But for the sake of this video and the sake of simplicity, we're just going to say this stops it. She would resolve, choose a card in your discard pile, and rejuvenate it. And then we would both discard the cards and kind of wipe our hands and be done with it. But if she chooses not to, let's just move this back over here, she's going to flip over the damage of the card. So I deal 3 damage because I have a party of 3. So we're going to just flip 3 cards over here and see what it looks like. And boom, the first one has Endurance. So Endurance is this little yellow circle with a 1 on it on the bottom. And what that does is that this card adds another 1 when taking damage. So this card is actually 2. So I've taken 2 damage now already for the cost of 1 card. And then you're going to flip out the next one, 3. There's Ramuh. We've taken 3 damage. The cards where you use Endurance, move them to your remove pile. The cards where you do not, move them to your discard pile. And then you discard your attack card. And you've successfully attacked in the Final Fantasy card game. Okay, so we're going to move on here. We kind of covered blocks there, so we got a 2 for 1. And then we're going to go to events. Events are very similar to attacks. You got them in your hand. It's my action. I'm going to go ahead and play my event. This one, power, look at your opponent's hand, choose a card, your opponent shuffles that card into their deck. And you and your opponent are going to back and forth in combat. I take an action, my opponent takes an action. I take an action, my opponent takes an action. It's kind of a chess match in that way. And then you're going to do that until you either A, you have no possible actions left to take, or B, you are trying to pass, which is an action you can take at any time. You could just pass, and combat actually ends when both players pass. So we're going to discard this confrontation. We're going to pretend like we resolved it. We looked at our opponent's hand and shuffled it away. My opponent takes an action, and now we're going to move on to Holy, which is a magic card. Magic cards are very similar to attacks and events. It's kind of an attack and an event all rolled into one, because most magic cards attack, but not all of them, where all attack cards do attack. So this in particular, this card, it does attack, and also it highlights an effect here, the cost effect. So when you are paying for a card with a cost of 1, you simply take the top card of your deck and put it on top of your discard pile. That is paying 1 cost. Now, there is another option for paying cost on non-limit break cards, and that is going to your limit break, lowering your limit break by 1, which sometimes mine does not want to use the little minus symbol there, but you just lower your limit break by 1. You have effectively paid the cost for Holy, and now you can resolve its immediate effects. So in this instance, we'll rejuvenate 1. But also, not to complicate things further, but Aerith says rejuvenate 1 when you use a white magic card. This card has the little white magic hat on it, so we're going to rejuvenate another just to play that little scenario out. My opponent would choose if they're going to block or attack, or block or take the damage. And then after the card is resolved, we put it in the discard pile and move on. My opponent takes an action, and I'm just going to roll right into summon cards. So summon cards, and actually this one isn't the best now that I think about it, because summon cards, for the most part, all have cost 4 on them. So if you remember how we did cost 1, we just take the top card 1, 2, 3, 4, and pay for the cost of the summon card. Now, summon cards are so expensive because not only do they give you typically an extremely powerful attack that is game changing, but also they give you a constant power that you get to enjoy the benefits of for an entire combat. So these are very costly, highly rewarding cards to play in your deck. And then, to kind of tie this back into the next card type, let's say we have 3 Limit Break. Ramuh is not a Limit Break card. He is a summon card. So for Ramuh, we could take 3 Limit Break and pay it off our Limit Break and only pay 1 for him. And this is sufficient for paying a cost of 4 on a non-Limit Break card. For an actual Limit Break card, like this Knights of the Round we have here, let's remove this just to get it off there. He has a cost of 3. Now, Limit Break cards you cannot pay for by discarding cards off the top of your deck like you can other card types. Limit Break cards must be paid with Limit Break, which 3 is actually the maximum you can have in Limit Break. That is essentially how you use a Limit Break card, is you pay 3 Limit Break on your next action, and then on that action that you paid 3, you go ahead and use your Limit Break card, whatever it may do. And that is all the card types, I believe. We've hit setups, equipment, characters, attacks, blocks, events, summons, and magic cards. On the magic cards and even these summon cards, well, across many different cards, you will see the elemental symbols, which is the elemental crystal at the top left here. Purple is going to be lightning, blue is going to be water, red is going to be fire, white is going to be light, black is going to be dark, and then you've got earth, which is yellow, and wind, which is green. Those are simply just saying, hey, this is a lightning card, and that is more for your synergies that we talked about earlier. Certain characters will have this cross sword symbol and maybe the lightning crystal to symbolize that hey, I'm good with swords, but also if your cards have this lightning crystal, I'm good with that card too. I think that covers it for all the card types. And in the next module, we will probably cover some of the keywords on the cards and go from there. All right, thank you.